Let me ask you a question. Think back to your school days. You probably spent thousands of hours sitting in classrooms. You learned how to solve algebra equations. You memorized historical dates. You learned the periodic table, the parts of a cell, and maybe even how to calculate the area of a triangle. Some of those lessons were useful. Some you've probably never used again. But there's one subject that quietly affects almost every decision you'll make as an adult, and almost nobody teaches it. Money. Not how to count it, not how to calculate interest, but how money actually works in real life. How it influences your emotions, how it shapes your decisions, how it quietly determines the amount of freedom you have. And perhaps most importantly, why some people seem to build wealth almost effortlessly, while others earn good money but never seem to get ahead. Here's the strange part. This isn't because one group is smarter. It isn't because they know some secret investment strategy. Most of the time, it's because they understand something about money that many of us never learn. And today, I want to share those lessons with you. No complicated financial jargon, no get-rich-quick promises, no magical investment tricks. Just a few simple ideas that completely change the way you think about money. Because once your thinking changes, your decisions begin to change. And over time, your life changes too. Before we begin, let me tell you about two people. We'll call them Alex and Ryan. Both graduated from college in the same year. Both got jobs at different companies. Both earned almost the same salary. At first, their lives looked almost identical. They rented similar apartments, bought similar phones, met friends on weekends. Everything seemed equal. Fast forward 10 years. Alex has built a healthy emergency fund. He has investments quietly growing in the background. He's not rich, but if something unexpected happens, he's okay. Ryan, on the other hand, earns even more than Alex now. He drives a nicer car, lives in a bigger apartment, takes more expensive vacations. From the outside, he looks successful, but behind the scenes, he's constantly worried. One unexpected medical bill, one job loss, one major emergency, and everything starts falling apart. Now here's the interesting question. Who understands money better? Most people immediately point to Ryan, because we naturally confuse looking wealthy with being financially secure. But those are two completely different things. And that's exactly where most people begin making expensive mistakes. Not because they aren't intelligent, but because nobody ever explained how money actually behaves. Money isn't math, it's behavior. Most of us grow up believing that money is a numbers game. If you earn more, you'll become wealthier. If you're good at math, you'll naturally be good with money. It sounds logical, but reality tells a different story. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who earns a very high salary, yet somehow is always broke? Maybe they complain that they never have enough. Maybe every raise disappears within a few months. Maybe every unexpected expense becomes a crisis. Now think about someone else. They don't earn an extraordinary income. They don't drive luxury cars. They don't constantly show off expensive purchases. Yet they always seem calm. They never panic when something breaks. They rarely stress about bills. Slowly, almost invisibly, their financial life keeps improving. If money were simply mathematics, this wouldn't happen. But money isn't just mathematics. It's psychology, it's habits, it's emotions, it's patience. Every single day, money asks you questions. Should I spend this now or later? Should I buy this because I need it or because I want other people to notice it? Should I choose comfort today or freedom tomorrow? Those questions don't require a calculator. They require self-awareness. That's why people with the same income can end up living completely different lives. Because wealth isn't built by a single big decision. It's built by thousands of tiny decisions that nobody else ever sees. Here's something that completely changed the way I think about money. Money doesn't care how intelligent you are. It doesn't care where you studied. It doesn't care how many degrees you have. Money simply follows behavior. If your habits are healthy, money quietly grows. If your habits are unhealthy, more money often creates bigger problems instead of solving them. That's why we've all heard stories of lottery winners who ended up bankrupt, or celebrities and athletes who earned millions, yet eventually lost almost everything. It wasn't because they forgot how to add and subtract. It was because earning money and managing money are two completely different skills. One gets you paid, the other keeps you free. And that's a lesson most of us never hear until much later in life. So before we talk about investing, before we talk about saving or building wealth, we need to understand one simple truth. Money is never just about money. It's about behavior. Because once your behavior changes, your financial future begins changing with it. And that brings us to one of the biggest traps almost everyone falls into. A trap that's so common, most people don't even realize they're running the race. It's called lifestyle inflation. Let's talk about that. So, if money is mostly about behavior, what's the biggest behavior that quietly keeps people from building wealth? Surprisingly, it isn't spending too much, it isn't earning too little, and it isn't making one terrible financial mistake. It's something much more ordinary. In fact, almost everyone experiences it. The problem is, most people never notice it's happening. It's called lifestyle inflation. Imagine it's your first day at work. You receive your very first paycheck. You feel proud. Maybe you take your family out for dinner. Maybe you buy something you've wanted for a long time. There's nothing wrong with that. You've earned it. Then, a year passes. You get a promotion. Your salary increases. You tell yourself, this time I'll save more. But somehow, it doesn't happen. Instead, your apartment gets a little nicer. Your phone gets upgraded. Food delivery becomes more frequent. Streaming subscriptions quietly multiply. Coffee changes from an occasional treat to an everyday habit. Nothing feels extravagant. Each decision seems completely reasonable. After all, you can afford it now. Then another promotion comes, another raise, another upgrade, a better car, more expensive vacations, branded clothes, a larger house. And before you even realize it, your expenses have quietly climbed right alongside your income. A few years later, you're earning twice as much as before. Yet somehow you still find yourself saying, I don't know where all my money goes. Sound familiar? If it does, you're not alone. Because this isn't a personal failure, it's human nature. Our brains are surprisingly quick at adapting. Think about the first smartphone you ever owned. Remember how exciting it felt? You explored every feature. You showed it to your friends. It felt special. Now think about the phone in your pocket today. It's probably far more powerful. Yet most days, you barely notice it. Why? Because your brain has adjusted. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. In simple words, we quickly get used to improvements. The things that once made us happy soon become normal. And once something becomes normal, our brain starts looking for the next upgrade. The same thing happens with money. The raise that once felt life-changing soon feels ordinary. The nicer apartment becomes your new normal. The better car no longer feels exciting. Your expectations quietly rise without you realizing it. And that's why earning more doesn't always make people feel richer. Sometimes it simply makes their lifestyle more expensive. Now, here's where things become even more interesting. Most people think they're making financial decisions independently, but often they're not. They're responding to an invisible competition. Imagine two neighbors. One buys a brand new SUV. Suddenly, the other neighbor starts thinking, maybe it's time I upgraded too. Not because their old car stopped working, not because they actually needed one, but because comparison quietly entered the picture. The same happens with phones, houses, vacations, watches, designer clothes, even restaurants. We rarely compare ourselves to billionaires. We compare ourselves to the people around us, our coworkers, friends, neighbors, people we follow on social media. Without realizing it, their spending becomes the new standard for what feels normal. Psychologists call this social comparison. It's our natural tendency to measure our lives against the people around us. The problem is, the people you're comparing yourself to may not be as financially secure as they appear. Their lifestyle could be funded by loans, credit cards, or years of financial stress that you never get to see. Social media makes this even worse. You see someone's vacation, but not the overtime they worked to pay for it. You see the new car, but not the monthly payments. You see the luxury apartment, but not the anxiety that comes with trying to afford it. You're comparing someone else's highlights to your own reality, and that's a race nobody truly wins. Here's something worth remembering.
Every dollar has two jobs. It can either improve your lifestyle or improve your future. Sometimes spending is absolutely worth it. Experiences with family, travel, learning new skills, taking care of your health. Those aren't just expenses, they're investments in your life. But many purchases aren't really about happiness. They're about appearance, about fitting in, about proving something to people who probably aren't paying nearly as much attention as we imagine. One simple question can completely change the way you spend money. Before buying something, ask yourself, if nobody else could ever see this, would I still want it? That's a surprisingly difficult question, and your answer often reveals whether you're buying for yourself or for approval. Now let me tell you about one habit I've noticed in people who quietly build wealth. When they get a raise, they don't immediately upgrade their entire lifestyle. Instead, they upgrade their future first. Imagine you receive a salary increase of $500 every month. Many people immediately find ways to spend all $500. Someone focused on building wealth might invest $300
$150, save another $100, and enjoy the remaining $50 guilt-free. They still celebrate their progress, but they don't allow every raise to disappear. Over time, that small gap between what they earn and what they spend becomes enormous. Because wealth isn't created by a high salary, it's created by the space between income and expenses. That gap is where freedom grows. There's a quote I love: "The fastest way to feel rich isn't earning more, it's needing less." That doesn't mean living a miserable life. It doesn't mean never enjoying your money. It simply means being intentional, buying things because they genuinely improve your life, not because everyone else seems to have them. Because the truth is, there will always be someone with a bigger house, a newer phone, a more expensive vacation. If your definition of success depends on having more than other people, the finish line keeps moving forever. It's an invisible race, and the only way to win is to stop running it. Once you understand lifestyle inflation, you stop asking, "How can I earn more?" and you start asking a much more powerful question: how can I keep more of what I earn? That single shift in thinking has quietly changed the financial future of countless people. But there's still one problem. Even when we know what the smart decision is, our brain often pushes us toward the opposite one. Why? Because money doesn't just live in your wallet, it lives in your mind. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. So far, we've talked about something happening outside of us. Our income grows, our lifestyle grows with it, and before we know it, we're running a race we never intended to join. But here's something even more surprising. Sometimes, the biggest obstacle to building wealth isn't your salary. It isn't inflation. It isn't the economy. It's the conversation happening inside your own head. Because whether we realize it or not, our brain wasn't designed to make perfect financial decisions. It was designed to keep us alive. And those are two very different jobs. Imagine you're scrolling through your favorite shopping app. You weren't planning to buy anything, then suddenly a notification appears. 50% off today only. In an instant, your mind starts racing. That's a great deal. What if I miss it? Maybe I'll need it later. Notice what just happened. Before you even asked yourself, do I actually need this? Your emotions had already joined the conversation. And that's the interesting part. When it comes to money, our brains often react with emotion before logic has a chance to catch up. A sudden market crash, an unexpected expense, a limited time sale. Your brain doesn't always respond logically, it responds emotionally. That's why people panic during market downturns and buy expensive things during emotional highs. Not because they don't understand money, because emotions often speak louder than logic. And one of the biggest reasons for that is a powerful chemical inside your brain called dopamine. Think about the last time you bought something impulsively. Maybe it was a gadget, a pair of shoes, a course you never finished, or something that looked amazing online. At that moment, it felt like a great decision. You imagined how happy you'd feel once you owned it. Your brain rewarded you before you even made the purchase. That's because every exciting purchase releases dopamine, the brain chemical associated with anticipation and reward. Here's the funny part. The biggest dopamine spike doesn't usually happen when you own the item. It happens while you're imagining owning it. That's why online shopping can feel so addictive. Scrolling, comparing, adding things to your cart, thinking, this will make my life better. But then the package arrives. You open it, you enjoy it for a few days, and soon it becomes just another object sitting in your room. The excitement fades. So your brain starts searching for the next thing, not because you're irresponsible, because that's exactly how your brain is wired. Now compare that with saving money. Saving doesn't give you an immediate reward. Nobody applauds you for transferring money into an emergency fund. Nobody comments on your investment account. There's no exciting unboxing experience. It feels boring. But here's the irony. The decisions that feel the most exciting today often create stress tomorrow. And the decisions that feel boring today often create freedom tomorrow. That's one of the biggest paradoxes of money. Our brain naturally prefers short-term pleasure, even when long-term peace is far more valuable. That's why relying on willpower alone rarely works, because eventually, willpower gets tired. Systems don't. People who manage money well aren't necessarily more disciplined. They simply make good decisions easier. They automate their savings. They invest before they have a chance to spend. They remove saved payment methods from shopping apps. They wait 24 hours before making expensive purchases. These aren't signs of superhuman self-control. They're examples of understanding how the brain actually works. Instead of fighting their psychology, they design their environment around it. But there's another layer to this story, one that's much deeper. Because your financial decisions today didn't start today. Many of them began years ago, long before you earned your first paycheck, long before you opened your first bank account. They started in childhood. Think back for a moment. When you were growing up, how did people around you talk about money? Maybe every bill caused an argument. Maybe someone constantly said, "Money doesn't grow on trees," or "We're just not the kind of people who become rich." Maybe you watched your parents work incredibly hard, yet still struggle financially. Or perhaps money was never discussed at all. It was treated like a secret. As a child, you don't question these experiences. You absorb them. Just like you learned your first language, you also learned your first beliefs about money. Psychologists sometimes call these money scripts or money stories. They're unconscious beliefs that quietly influence how we earn, save, spend, and invest. The strange thing is, most people don't even realize they're following one. For example, someone who grew up hearing, "Rich people are greedy," might unconsciously avoid building wealth. Not because they don't want financial freedom, but because deep down, their brain has linked wealth with becoming a bad person. Someone who experienced financial insecurity as a child may obsessively save every penny, even when they can comfortably afford something they genuinely need. Another person might do the exact opposite. If money always felt scarce growing up, they may spend impulsively as soon as they receive it, because somewhere inside, their brain believes, "I might not have this opportunity again." Notice something important. None of these behaviors begin with numbers. They begin with beliefs. And beliefs are powerful because they quietly create habits. Habits create decisions, and decisions eventually create your financial future. Here's a simple exercise I'd like you to try. Take a moment and ask yourself, what's the very first feeling that comes to mind when I think about money? Is it excitement, freedom, fear, stress, guilt, pressure? Whatever your answer is, don't judge it. Just notice it. Because that feeling often tells you more about your financial life than your income does. Awareness is where change begins. You can't rewrite a story until you realize you're reading from one. I love a quote from psychologist Carl Jung. "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The same is true with money. Many people think, "I'm just bad with money," or "I'll never be financially successful." But often, that's not reality. It's simply an old story repeating itself in the background. And stories can be rewritten, not overnight, but one decision at a time. Every time you choose saving over impulse, every time you invest instead of trying to impress someone, every time you question an old belief instead of automatically following it, you're writing a new story. A story that future you will be grateful for.
So now we've uncovered two hidden forces. The first was the invisible race with other people. The second is the invisible conversation happening inside our own minds. But there's one final lesson, and it might be the one that changes how you look at successful people forever. Because the people who appear richest aren't always the people who are actually wealthy, and understanding the difference can completely change your financial future. So far, we've uncovered 3 lessons that most people never learn. First, money isn't about mathematics, it's about behavior. Second, the invisible race of lifestyle inflation quietly steals our financial progress. And third, our brain and our childhood experiences shape many of our financial decisions long before we realize it. Now there's one final lesson, and personally, I think it's the most important one of all, because once you understand it, you'll never look at money or successful people the same way again. Rich and wealthy are not the same thing. Imagine you're walking through a busy city. A shiny sports car drives past. Someone steps out wearing designer clothes, an expensive watch, and the latest smartphone. Almost automatically, your brain thinks, wow, they must be wealthy. But are they? The truth is, we don't actually know, because what we just saw was spending, not wealth. And that's one of the biggest illusions modern life creates. We've become incredibly good at displaying money, but not necessarily keeping it. Here's a simple way to think about it. Rich is what people can see. Wealthy is what they can't. Rich is the luxury car. Wealthy is owning investments that quietly grow while you sleep. Rich is buying expensive clothes. Wealthy is having enough savings that one unexpected emergency doesn't turn into a crisis. Rich is impressing strangers. Wealthy is sleeping peacefully. And if you think about it, only one of those actually changes your life. A few years ago, researchers asked an interesting question. Why do some people with average incomes quietly become millionaires, while others earning 5 or even 10 times as much constantly struggle? The answer wasn't intelligence. It wasn't luck. And surprisingly, it often wasn't income. It came down to one simple difference. Some people spent money trying to look wealthy. Others quietly used money to become wealthy. One group bought symbols of success. The other
other bought freedom. That's a very different game. Here's something worth remembering. The wealthiest things in your life are often invisible. You can't see someone's emergency fund. You can't see their investment portfolio. You can't see the debt they avoided. You can't see the nights they chose to stay home instead of spending money they didn't need to spend. Real wealth rarely announces itself. It grows quietly, month after month, year after year. That's why comparing yourself to other people's lifestyles is so dangerous. You're comparing what they choose to show to everything you know about yourself. It's not a fair comparison, because everyone's highlight reel looks impressive. Very few people post screenshots of their credit card bills. There's a quote from investor Morgan Housel that I absolutely love. Spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. Think about that for a moment. The more you're trying to prove you're successful, the harder it becomes to actually build lasting success. Because every dollar spent chasing approval is a dollar that can no longer work for your future. The superpower nobody talks about. Now let's talk about one skill that quietly sits behind almost every financial success story. It's not investing. It's not budgeting. It's not choosing the perfect stock. It's something much simpler: the ability to wait. Imagine I offered you two choices. I could give you $50 today, or I could give you $100 next month. Which would you choose? Many people immediately reach for today's reward. Not because they're greedy, because our brains naturally value immediate rewards more than future ones. Psychologists call this present bias. The future always feels distant. Today feels real. That's why buying something now feels easier than saving for something bigger later. Your brain keeps whispering, "You'll have another paycheck. You deserve this." It's only a small purchase, and one small purchase usually isn't the problem. The problem is that these small decisions happen hundreds of times every year, each one quietly borrowing a little bit from your future. But here's what financially successful people seem to understand. Delayed gratification isn't about saying no forever. It's about saying not yet. They still enjoy life. They travel. They celebrate milestones. They buy nice things. But they do those things after building the foundation first, because they know something many people don't. Freedom is far more enjoyable than impressing strangers. Imagine planting a tree. The first year, it barely grows. The second year, still not much changes. If you judged it every single day, you'd probably think nothing was happening. But underground, the roots are growing, quietly, patiently, preparing for something much bigger. Building wealth works exactly the same way. For months, sometimes years, it can feel like you're making no progress. You're saving, you're investing, you're avoiding unnecessary spending, and nothing dramatic seems to happen. That's when many people quit, not because the system doesn't work, but because the results are invisible. Then one day, the growth becomes impossible to ignore. Not because something magical happened overnight, but because all those small decisions finally had enough time to compound. The tree didn't suddenly decide to grow. It had been growing all along. And maybe that's the biggest lesson about money. It rewards patience far more than perfection. You don't need to make perfect decisions. You don't need to predict the future. You don't need to become a financial genius. You simply need to make slightly better decisions consistently for a long time. Because money compounds, habits compound, knowledge compounds, confidence compounds, and eventually your life compounds too. So let's come back to where we started. School taught us how to solve equations, but life asks completely different questions. Questions like, can you resist buying something you don't need? Can you stay calm when everyone else is panicking? Can you stop comparing your life to someone else's highlight reel? Can you choose freedom over appearances? Because those decisions, more than any formula you'll ever learn, shape your financial future. If you forget everything else from this video, I hope you remember these 4 lessons. Money isn't math, it's behavior. The goal isn't to earn more, it's to keep more of what you earn. Being rich isn't the same as being wealthy. One is visible, the other gives you peace. And finally, every dollar moves you closer to or farther from the life you want. Every time money enters your hands, you're quietly answering a question. Will I spend this to impress someone today, or will I use it to create more freedom for tomorrow? Most people answer that question without even realizing they're being asked. The people who build wealth answer it differently. Not because they're luckier, not because they're smarter, but because they understand something that no classroom ever taught them. Money isn't just about buying things. It's about buying time, buying choices, buying peace of mind, buying the freedom to say yes to the life you truly want and no to the things that don't. And in the end, that's what real wealth has always been. Not having more than everyone else, but needing less to feel enough. If this video changed the way you think about money, even just a little, then it has already done its job. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What's one money lesson you wish someone had taught you earlier in life? Your answer might become the lesson someone else needed today. And if you enjoy thoughtful conversations about psychology, money, habits, and building a better life, not through shortcuts, but through understanding, consider subscribing. Because sometimes the ideas that change our lives aren't the most complicated ones. They're simply the ones nobody ever taught us. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.